So welcome back to the Nika Fit podcast. I am your host, Katie, and today I am joined by a good friend, a client, Nathan Astbury. Welcome, Nathan.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us. So first of all, I thought we could get going by introducing yourself and letting everybody know who you are.
Yeah, my name's Nathan. I've been a member of Nika Fit for 3 years now, I think 3 years and a couple of months.
Mm-hmm. Part of the furniture at this stage.
Part of the furniture. You usually see me in there most days.
Very good. And where are you originally from? Where's the accent? Give us a bit of a background.
Originally from Leeds, over in England. Moved to Ireland 15 years ago. So I've been over here 15 years now.
So you're Irish now.
I'm Irish now.
Yeah.
I'd say so. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Very good. And you have a family. You've got 2 little sons. What age are they?
I do indeed. I have a boy who's 14 and another one who's 9.
And how's that?
So, teenager. He's 14 next week. So, proper teenager.
Yeah, getting to the fun years.
Yeah, definitely. All the hormones and everything bursting out of him.
I know. I was only talking to Amanda the other day, and my life is in 3 and 2 year old mode. Mm-hmm. So when I was talking to her, I was like, "Oh my god, imagine having a 14-year-old." It's like I can't even.
You're basically going to have 2 14-year-olds.
I know.
Nearly enough in a few years.
What I'd love to know, which is probably something I don't know as much about, considering how much I know you, is like where you were before you joined Nika Fit. Like what was going on in Nathan's life? What age were you when you joined the army?
I was 16.
Wow. And how did that come about?
So I left school and I went to college, and I was at college for 3 months, and I started doing A-level in physical education, PE, because I wanted to be a PE teacher. I realised after about 3 months college wasn't for me, for whatever reason, and there wasn't many jobs out there for a 16-year-old. So the army was taking people on, so I walked past the careers office and I had a look in, and at the time, if you'd have known me, it would have been probably the last thing you'd expect me to do, because I was quite a rebellious teenager. So the idea of taking orders from somebody and being told what to do would have been the last thing you'd expect me to do. But living with my parents at the time at 16, if I wasn't at school, I was expected to pay my way, so I would have had to contribute. I'd have basically pay my dad board money for living in the house and contribute towards the goods and pay for shopping and things like that. If he gave me a lift anywhere, I'd have to give him petrol money. He's the tightest man in the world, you probably know. I opted to join the army. So as a 16-year-old, I joined up. I was probably just short of my 17th birthday when I completed my basic training.
And in a nutshell, would you say you enjoyed it?
Yeah, made some great friends. The first 10 weeks, which is your military training, was the toughest. And if anybody's ever seen the film Full Metal Jacket, when they do their training, where I did my training was in the same location as where that film, Full Metal Jacket, was filmed. I always wondered, is it like the movies? Like, do they push you to your limits? Yeah, absolutely, yeah. You shouted at, you screamed at, you torn down, you built back up again, you woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you are subjected to room inspections and kit inspections, and if something isn't right, if you've got a hair somewhere, if your boots aren't shiny enough, I've known them be thrown out of windows, I've known your beds be, they used to call them tombstone in the beds, so you had your bed perfectly all done there with the hospital corners and all your kit on top of it, and you'd get inspected by a sergeant or a corporal come round, and if you didn't like it, you'd just literally tombstone the bed and just throw it up in the air, and you'd have to do it all again. You'd pull the contents of your locker out if you found something that wasn't supposed to be in there. You'd go on exercise, and this was all the military, because they always say in the army you're a soldier first and you're a tradesman second. So you have to learn to be a soldier. Even though my job in the army was the furthest from the front line, you still had to do your basic soldiering training first. So you were subject to constant fitness tests, which there was basic fitness tests, which was run think it was run 1.5 miles. You basically jogged a 1.5 miles in under 10 minutes, and then you had to do another 1.5 miles straight after. And that second 1.5 miles you had to do it in under 15 minutes. You did combat fitness tests where you ran 6 miles with at least 40 kilos of kit on your back. You did the bleep test as well, which anybody.
And no matter what your role was in the army, everybody had to do that, which is kind of cool because it's kind of, you're all treated the same, you're all come up with the same.
No matter what job you end up doing, you have to do this 10, 12 week.
And how long were you in the army for?
I was in the army for 4.5 years.
And was there ever points where you're like, I'm done, I'm leaving?
There was a couple of points.
Yeah, because when I hear you talking, I'm like, surely you're like, if something was out of line.
I remember a couple of points in basic training where it was, I had to carry 2 20-litre jerry cans of water, and we would been attacked by this enemy, this exercise scenario. And I just put them down at one point, and I was like, why am I doing this? I don't want to do this. It's 2:00 in the morning. It's absolutely lashing. I'm wet through, all my kit's wet. I'm carrying 2 20-litre drums of water that weigh a ton for, I was only 8 stone wet through at that stage. So I was like, why am I doing it? And there was a couple of times where I nearly walked. But then once you kind of get over that, and then you get posted to the unit, and it's not too bad. You get to you then, after you do your basic training, go to your trade training. So you learn. That's where I learned the trade that I do now, to work on generators. And then you get posted to your unit, and that's where the fun part of it, I suppose, happens, because you're in there with all the lads. You get to meet. I mean, I have friends there for life.
Yeah, you make some brothers.
Yeah,
and so. The job work you do in there that you're doing now, explain to us a little bit what that is.
So I work on emergency power, so generators that would be backup power for data centers, which is massive in Ireland at the minute. The likes of Facebook, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they all have to have some kind of backup if the power goes. And you can't, Mary from Texas can't post about a stolen dog in Dublin. She has to be able to do that if Facebook ever lose power. And the same with hospitals, banks, nursing homes, hotels, anywhere that can't afford to be without power would have a backup generator. Even the Super Value next door has a backup generator.
Interesting. And then 4.5 years in the army, that has to shape you, right? Especially as a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
You're highly... what's the word? Is moldable, right? Like you're an age, you're absorbing, you're learning. Like what happened when you came out of the military? Like how did that become your normal life? That way of living, was that normal to you?
A lot of elements were translatable. So like I have a thing now, and you'll notice this when I come to the gym, I'm always 5 minutes early. And that's something that the teacher in the army, so that's like if I'm in the gym at 4:00, I will always be there at least 5 to 4, and it's the same with work. It's the same with anything. If we go into a doctor's appointment, if we're going to a pie, I will always insist on being there 5 minutes early, because that was always drummed into you. If you get a time to be somewhere, aim to be there 5 minutes early so that you're never late. And that kind of thing, organising things, you'd always have the stuff in your back of the van. It would always been, nice and neat and put away for fear that anybody would ever look in there and pull it to bits for not being right. And paperwork, things like that, just all things that were translatable. But then, there's that rebellious element as well that comes when you leave the army. Where
that's what I was going to say. You would have been young, early 20s.
You're kind of used to having everything to a certain extent laid out for you. So your accommodation is taken out of your wage. So your accommodation is paid. You have no choice in that matter. Your meals are at certain times. Now, don't get me wrong, you can go to the shop and buy other stuff if you want, but once you've eaten your breakfast, once you've eaten your lunch, which was always a substantial meal and different choices, you didn't really find yourself snacking too much. So once you come out of that, and all of a sudden you've got to make your own breakfast, you've got to make your own dinner, you've got to get your shopping in, you've got to pay your bills, to kind of, as much as to give you resettlement courses for civilian life, you don't really pay too much heed to that. You're kind of like, I'm getting out, hey, I'm going to be my own man. And so... Especially,
what age would you have been? Early 20s, 21?
Yeah, early 20s. So left the army, and now all of a sudden I'm getting paid a bit more money, and I've got no real responsibilities other than myself. So let's go party.
Yeah, and is that what you did?
To a certain extent, yeah. But then you have the background there that you can't go too mad, I suppose.
Yeah, it's starting to make a lot of sense why you can stick to things you said you were going to do. You know, you have that military background, you have that. It's probably drilled in you somewhere, you know.
Stubbornness.
Yeah.
I think it is what it is.
It's good, though.
Amanda's the same. We're two very stubborn people. We have arguments that could last for days.
It gets you where you want to get to.
Exactly.
Stubbornness is good when you have two stubborn people. I wouldn't say me and Niall are too far off that either. We're both always right.
Exactly. And Amanda will say the same. How can you argue if you don't talk to each other?
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to splat it out for sure. You felt like what was going on in Nathan's life? What led you to...
It's a long story. So my background for work-wise was always travelling as a service engineer. So most of it would be sort of 80%, 90% driving from one job to another. And then work was the other 10%. So I found myself subconsciously just, like, my diet was terrible. Roadside cafes, McDonald's, takeaways on an evening because you were getting home so late and you couldn't be bothered to cook. So I would be everything that you would have hated as a nutritionalist, as a nutrition coach. When you talk, I would get up and have a packet of cheese and crisps for breakfast, and then I'd run out the door, go to my job, I'd stop, I'd get a burger on the way to my first job. Lunch would be McDonald's, I'd be working late, I'd get a Chinese. Everything that I wasn't supposed to be doing. And you kind of don't notice yourself creeping up and the weight creeping on. And then things happen in life. You have kids and you pay less attention to yourself and more attention to the kids. And before you know it, you're quite round. I think is the best way to describe it.
It's a nice way to put it. Yeah, and I think like a lot of people listening could probably relate to that so much. Like sometimes you don't see it, you know, and it just becomes your life, doesn't it? Yeah. And like you are a sum of the actions you make on a daily basis, you know.
Definitely.
And it's not, nobody is choosing to get on any certain path. Sometimes we just find ourselves on those paths. And I was kind of, at what point did you kind of say, right, something needs to change, or what spurred that change on?
There was probably a couple of things. So in 2014, our eldest son, Jaden, he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which your listeners are probably familiar with Jack.
Jack S in the gym.
Jack Saunders, he's a fellow type 1 as well. So a lot of focus then kind of went off us and more into Jaden. And then we had Tyler at the same time as well. And he was diagnosed with autism age 2. So everything from me and Amanda was putting into the kids. So you don't really look after yourself at that stage and you just crack on with life. So when I got to the typical tipping point of 40, shall we say, so about 2 months before I turned 40, I just kind of said to myself, I'm going to have to get myself and my life in order here. I was struggling at work to carry out physical work, climbing upstairs to get to jobs, lifting stuff in and out, and even just playing with the kids now, running around for 5 minutes on the field, completely out of breath. The clothing sizes were getting larger and larger. I think at one point the largest thing I owned was a double XL, which seems strange now. I'm wearing small sizes. And so I think it was October, November, which would have been sort of 4 months before I was 40. I said, right, when I turn 40, I want to be fitter and healthier. So I started running. And when I look back now, and I thought I was making great strides, I was maybe running for 1 kilometre and then walking for 2 kilometres. And small steps turn into larger strides. And then the running was killing me. And I had a conversation with Louise Cole, who's another member. And I think for Christmas, you guys had given trial memberships to your existing clients. And Louise says, look, you're running all the time. Try something different. Here's a month's free trial with Nick of it. So I was like, okay. And I kind of looked at it online. And the very first thing that I remember, and the most where I become of Nick of it, and I know I say Nick of it, it's not Nick of it, it's Nick of it, because it's Niall and Katie.
It's rebranded to Nick of it.
So it's Nick of it, yeah.
I think I'm the only one who calls it Nick of it, so we might as well just go with Nick of it.
I'm going to embarrass another member here, because I was only talking to him about this last week. Johnny Davis was the first Nick of it transformation I was aware of when I saw his pictures, and I was like, wow. Look at what this guy's achieved. And I remember going in with the trial membership pass and speaking to Niall. And I was kind of looking at it, and coming from the background that I came from, where obviously I used to be in the army, so I was always quite fit, and it was obviously quite a manly environment and things like that. And I was kind of going in and I was just worried about being unfit and how would I cope. And I think my first 2 introductory sessions, your trial sessions, I was being taught the weirdest things in my head at the minute was how to move and how to breathe and how to bend. And I'm like, I've been picking things up all my life. Why are you telling me how to? And no, you need to bend at the hips. I'm like, no, I'm just bending down and picking it up. So I think the first 2 sessions I did, I didn't lift a weight, and I was like, is this for me? But then I kind of, so we'll persevere with it. And then I remember my first group fit session, and how I came back after that, I don't know. I think I had to be scraped up off the floor after the first group fit session. But it leaves you wanting more every time you go in. So that was how I came to be a member.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you said that. Like sometimes what we think we want and what we need are 2 very different things. Yeah. And I think a good gym anyway, I would like to think anyway, will explain to you why you need what you need is important, that kind of way. And like that, why mobility and why movement helps you be able to do those things. So having that kind of being brought up through that is great to hear that you benefit from that, rather than, and a lot of places do like just throw you in too deep because that's what you want, straight away. So,
I could give you an example of another gym I joined a couple of years before, Nick, where you were just thrown in. But, been taken through the fundamentals of the basic movements that you're going to need to lift anything, not just anything heavy, and I remember doing glute bridges in the first or second session thinking, when am I ever going to need to do this? I need to lose the belly, not tone my backside. What's happening here? But it's all relative. And, those lessons that you learn at the start stay with you throughout the whole.
Look at those glutes now, Nathan.
Exactly.
Look at those buns of steel.
Buns of steel now, my youngest one actually says that. He whacks me on the backside sometimes. You've got buns of steel.
all those glute bridges that we made you do.
They all worked. And it's mad that, looking back at that and just thinking, wow. I think I was around about 92, 93 kilos when I first walked through those doors. And I was a good bit heavier before I walked through the doors because I kind of thought to myself, there's no way I can go in the gym in the shape I'm in. So at least, trying to lose a bit. Even like just trying to change the diet. Even though I changed my diet, I wasn't eating all the crap that I was eating before, but I still wasn't eating right. I thought I was eating what I thought was right. But
I laugh. It's one of those things, everybody says the same thing. I just need to lose a bit of weight and get a bit fitter before I join the place that's going to teach me how to lose a bit of weight.
I know.
It's like driving a car. You'd never say, right, I'm going to go out and just practice myself and then get some driving lessons. But for some reason we do it
and I think it applies to men and women. Men are obviously, and women, competitive and judge each other by nature. So, and
it's a confidence thing, we doubt ourselves and we assume that we're going to be the one person in the room that's the new person, and it's normal. It's like, but it's just interesting that you said it because I think a lot of people say that, and it's good for people that might be listening that maybe aren't quite at that step to realize it's like you don't have to lose weight, you don't have to try get fitter before you come in. Like it's much easier when you're doing it in a group of people that are also trying to do it. It's much easier when you have support. So if you're in Nathan's old shoes, just jump in and get stuck in. But no, so talking from a physical change point of view, like what physical changes have you noticed?
Firstly, I'm shopping in a lot smaller sizes these days. Actually, a little story. I went shopping on Monday and bought my, first pair of size 30-inch jeans there. I was like, no, this can't be right. So that's physical change.
The tag is wrong.
I had to double check. I was like, I'm here 32 or 34. No, try the 32. I'm like, well, these are too big. What's going on? Compared to the 38s that I was wearing. I'm just massively more confident now, mentally and physically. I think has been the biggest change. Physically, I'm now doing more than I ever would. I'm getting told off at home for playing football as well as going to the gym and then playing rugby as well. years ago, I wouldn't have even contemplated doing that.
And just little things you said there, like running after the kids, at 5 minutes into it, you'd be gassed. Now you're going out for big, long runs.
Exactly. I'm finding myself wanting to go out for walks or wanting to go out for, like, the lockdown, for example. We'll probably talk about that later. But, running every second day in the lockdown. 3 years ago, I wouldn't have done that,
just building up that physical fitness, that physical stamina. It's just being stronger, and I think it so translates, like what you do inside the gym just replicates and ripples into every part of your life if you get stronger within a gym, or whether it's whether you're running or whatever you're doing. If you're working on something and getting stronger, it's going to ripple into everything else. So mentally, then, have you noticed changes? You were saying your confidence, like what mental changes have you noticed?
I think most 50% of it is mental and 50% of it is physical. When you're in the gym and you've gotten stronger and you've gotten fitter, it kind of gives you that level to that mental energy to go out and do something to keep up that level of fitness, to keep up that level of strength. You'll see with members that want to work out at home through the online classes, and people who didn't want to do the online class but were doing their own thing. So from that end, I'm definitely happier and more confident, without a shadow of a doubt. And you just keep wanting to come back for more. That's people say it's like a cult.
For all the right reasons.
Yeah, definitely. And it is. It's an addictive thing. I've trained in a good few gyms and a good few different environments over the years, but never anything like this that makes you want to come back.
Yeah, we're secretly paying people to come back in and bribing them and what's the word, blackmailing them, I'm joking.
Something kind of addictive that you're putting in the air conditioning system.
It's this little this fragrance.
Is there a certain smell in the place that people are addicted to when they come back? They have to come back and
I think it's like that element of finding your tribe. It sounds a bit cliche and people, you see it, but it's that idea. It's like you're technically putting yourself into an environment where other people who have the same interests are also doing the same thing as you and working on the same things as you. So you kind of find similar people, you end up making friends, you end up getting along with coaches. We're all here to do the same thing and everyone's on their own path, but primarily together. So
that was one of the massive things that I've taken from joining, is the sheer amount of people that I've met through it. Other members, some of them have tremendous stories behind them. I mean, you've had Neva, strength that she showed has been unbelievable. But you've other people that have made such massive transformations and a massive difference to their life. People who've lost, weight, who've got stronger physically, mentally through going in there. It's, you're always going to be training with somebody who has done something and achieved something that's made their life better in there. And you kind of buzz off them and they'll buzz off you. And again, I keep name dropping him here, but Johnny Davis is a massive example for me from training alongside of him. And we always push each other that little bit more. It's one of those, and there's probably another 20 or 30 members who are like that. When you're training with them, you get that little bit more output because they're training just as hard as you, and they've been in the same boat as you before, and they've got to the same point that you are now, and you want to keep each other honest while you're training. So
absolutely, that idea of training in that small group environment, so you still have people alongside you, and it's cool to hear you talk about that, because I probably don't see as much of that, because that's happening, alongside the people that you're training with. Whereas what I see is a lot of like the individual route, which obviously is such a massive part of it, like even though you are around people and you can totally gain motivation and inspiration from people around you, but in order to get the results, and you'll know this firsthand, you got to put in the work, and it has to come from you. And like, people around you can motivate you, and I as your coach can tell you, right, do this and this and this, but you've got to get up and show up and do it every single day. And that's something that I want to talk about today, because you've just done that phenomenally well. So like, in terms of the weight you've lost 17, 18 kilos in one go, if that makes sense, as in like you've kept going and kept losing and all those kind of things. And what kind of things have you had to do that,
Well, lockdown, if we take the first lockdown, for example, obviously the first lockdown didn't go too well for me. So I put on a good bit of weight, but that was me working throughout the whole thing and looking at people on Facebook, seeing them drinking in the garden on the old unemployment payment, the pandemic unemployment payment, having a great time. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm having to work for all this, so why can't I have this, drinks in the garden and ordering takeaways and things like that. So I regressed so badly with not having the gym as a go-to place, not being able to work out at home for various reasons. And, obviously I regressed. So when the third lockdown was announced, I made a promise to myself that I was going to get back into the shape that I was before the first lockdown. And I think the good thing with NicaFit is I worked with you to do that. And I work best with Shane training. But there's a combination there. I've done my nutrition with Shane. I train best with Shane. Shane for me is a great coach. And I worked with him for nutrition, but it didn't work for me. With working with you for nutrition, it did. There's a combination there. So if you've got a member that something's not clicking, try another coach and they will get you the results, because there's a massive wealth of experience of training and nutrition there. What works for one person is not going to necessarily work for the next. And come the third lockdown, obviously we worked together, and I made a promise to myself, whatever the weather, whatever you're feeling, every second day, go out for a run. I don't care if you don't feel like it. I don't care if it's snowing. I don't care if it's raining. I don't care if you've got something on. You make that time. If it's 3 kilometers, if it's 5 kilometers, if it's 7, if it's 10, whatever you're feeling like doing, you have to do something. So that was how I got through the third lockdown. And obviously your weekly phone calls helped me stay on point on nutrition. And that's how we got to where we are today.
Someone wants your attention.
That's
yeah, absolutely. And that's just from the outside looking in, like you tracked your calories daily, you tracked your weight daily, you kept your runs up daily. And I think what always stood out to me with you is that you took that no excuses mentality. You kind of said, there's going to be times where I don't want to do it and I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And if you do something enough, you'll see a change. If you do something long enough, you'll see a change. And that's what you do. You just stick to it. So you didn't not have a beer.
No,
you didn't
absolutely.
cut out takeaways.
No.
You didn't cut out stuff that makes people normal, but you just stayed accountable to the thing the whole time,
Everything was tracked, and it's obviously through doing that. If I knew I was going to have to take away a few beers on the weekend, I adjusted accordingly during the week. Having the tools to do that comes from working with yourself or other coaches on the nutrition side. I feel like now from talking to you guys that I'm almost an expert on nutrition. And when you're talking to somebody who doesn't know what a calorie deficit is and you're telling them what you've learned in the gym and passing on your knowledge, you almost feel like an expert talking to them because what you've been taught. I give my dad an example. He's like, I'm drinking this green tea because it's helping me lose weight. Not if you're eating the entire contents of the fridge for the rest of the day. Green tea is not going to have a great effect. And like you tell somebody about calorie deficit, it's like you're trying to explain quantum physics to them. But yeah, it's
stuff that we take for granted now because we're so absorbed into it, it's great to hear that. And I love hearing that like we're creating trainers, like you guys are now coaching people around you, because people see that you're happier and they see that you're fitter and they see that you're healthier and they want to know what the secret is. And it's nice to be able to say there is no secret. You just got to do what you need to do.
It's consistency.
Over and over.
It's the only way you can explain it. You need to be consistent with your diet. You need to be consistent with your training. I'm lucky in the fact that I can be quite determined when I do things like that. But at the same time, as determined as can be, I still need sometimes to be told to stay on the straight.
Absolutely. It's a nice fine balance. And I think that's really important, is that you have to actually want it. And that's the thing that we see a lot of the time, is that like people will look at, wow, how did Nathan lose 18 kilos? That's amazing. You wanted it, and you wanted it enough to do it because, like you said, we create a good system and we make it easy to stay accountable because we have the system there, we have the knowledge there, and we show you how to do it well. We show you how to look at averages rather than day to day. You can really learn a lot, and that makes the whole thing easier. But at the end of the day, you're the one putting the food in your mouth. Yeah. You're the one getting up and going out for that run. And I think there's a nice balance there. But I think you kind of hit that nail on the head. It's just nice to like talk it out, because I think sometimes when people see these things from the outside, it's always, I wonder how he did it. It's so nice to have a platform like a podcast to be able to, talk about that rather than just, seeing the picture or seeing the little testimonial or whatever it might be.
Yeah. So people always say, Jesus, you did great in the last lockdown. I'm like, yeah, but I let myself go in the first one. So I was only doing the damage that I've done in the first one. It's hard to take credit for when you've just done something that you see as perfectly normal now.
This is just your normal life. Yeah. And that's when you said that, I let it all go in the first lockdown. And I decided, why can't I have fun? I'm going to put my feet up and have fun. And it's something that I think we all do a lot. And that's probably why people have a big issue, or why they might have a weight issue, is because there's always that flip-flop between what I really want and like what I deserve, right? And there is that, it's trying to find that balance between, like, of course you still deserve to have the nice things, but you have to find the right balance that it doesn't set you back. And I think it just goes to show that health and fitness and exercise is not something that you do for a holiday. It's not something that you do to lose weight once. It should be something people think about for life, as in like, and yourself, if you tick your general boxes and you look after the basics, like make sure you're getting enough sleep at night, make sure you're eating in and around the right amount of calories week to week. Like, you could probably come away from tracking now and have a fair idea of how you need to eat. And what habits set you up well and keep you in good shape, and what habits start sending in the opposite way. And now you've created a whole new lifestyle for yourself, which is just, it's so amazing to watch it. That's what my favorite part about this work is just seeing someone change physically, mentally, emotionally, everything in between. And like, it's been so nice being able to work with you, like literally side by side, watching you make that change, because you can just see somebody transform, and like, you have such control over your life, which is amazing. And something that I thought would be interesting to talk about, which I've loved about our journey together, is that idea of like reducing calories. So most people listening to this will know that in order to lose weight, you need to reduce calories and move more, right? That's the kind of the key to calorie deficit. Eat less, move more, right? But what happens when you do that a lot? What happens when you keep eating less and you keep moving more? What happens to the quality of life then?
Your quality of life isn't as good. You have no energy and you don't train very well and you get injured.
Absolutely.
Which is a trap that I fell into last year, by trying to keep the calories too low and train too much.
And it's the trap that a lot of people fall into, because when you're so programmed to know that eating less and moving more gets you where you want to go,
it will only get yourself fat.
Yeah, people realize that you come to that point, you lose a lot of body fat, but now the body recognizes, we're consistently getting hardly any calories. So let's not burn as many. Let's just be more tired. Let's sit on the couch for the evening. Let's not do that plan we had. Let's just chill, right? And that's the body's way of trying to down-regulate that calorie deficit and trying to like stop burning as much. So all of a sudden now you're not eating a huge amount. You're also not moving a huge amount, and now you're not feeling great, right? And now Nathan is in a place, which is amazing, is we're building back up calories. So Nathan wanted to lose the weight he'd put on through lockdown, and you did that absolutely brilliantly. Like, you stuck to your training, you didn't drop too low, you just had that nice solid calorie deficit for a long consistent time. And then Nathan got to his goal weight, and now he is building back up the calories. What's your quality of life like these days?
I'm flying at the minute. I've never trained as well, and I've never had so much fun training. It's massively made a difference. I'm still tracking now, but the weight's going up, and I'm okay with that. I wouldn't have been okay with that a year ago. But it's taken that upward curve and then downward curve, and then it's like we're going to plateau now. It makes a massive difference when you're training on a good amount of calories. It does. Lifting more, training more, happier in the gym. I am not getting injured as much. And it took a while for that to sink in, that message, that penny to drop, because you get so you can go down such a dark alley with calorie deficit, and then you go down so low, and then you stop losing weight because your body adapts to 1,700, 1,500, whatever calories you told you're on, and then you convince yourself that you need to move more, and you move more, and you keep the calories the same, and then you might lose a little bit more weight, but then that plateaus, and where do you go from there? You don't. Your body basically says, I don't want to train, so you force yourself to train, and then you end up getting injured, and then you end up having time off, and then you end up putting on weight. So you need somebody like yourself to guide you through not just a calorie deficit and losing fat, but exiting that stage as well, and doing it in such a way that it's manageable and it's maintainable.
Yeah, and it's harder. It's harder than a calorie deficit, because we all know about how to diet. We all know how to pull calories back, and and that's why I thought it'd be good to talk about that today, because I know there's been a lot of people in that position that when you finish a diet, let's say, or you finish your calorie restriction phase, there's no thought then put into the next phase, and that's where the weight gain happens, and the kind of like erratic eating, or just the returning to old habits, old bad habits, or losing some of those good ones. But when you stay tracking and like build your calories back up, all of a sudden you're still totally in control. your quality of life goes through the roof, training goes through the roof. And then all of a sudden now you're able to maintain and you're able to kind of like really build. So just for anybody listening that doesn't understand that, what happens when you go into a calorie deficit, your body recognizes the calorie deficit and it doesn't want to be in a calorie deficit. So it'll just cause you to slow down, essentially, so that you're not burning as much. And like Nathan said, the only option there, if you want to, like if your body has stopped outputting as many calories, the only option really is to start inputting less, which is just miserable. So that is a good time. If anyone is listening who's in that boat, who's thinking, God, how could I go any lower? I'm already eating shite all calories and I'm feeling miserable. Just start building back up your calories, build them back up until your weight plateaus, wait till your weight is at maintenance. And what you'll do is you'll start burning way more calories. You'll start moving more in your training sessions. You'll move more. You'll want to go for walks more. Your quality of life will go through the roof. And then from a nice high maintenance, whenever you find that nice number where you're just sitting at the same weight, you can then go back into a calorie deficit again. But Nathan, we're going on the up. We're going into a building phase.
Well, yeah, I've been eating a lot more these last 4 weeks and I haven't put an ounce on. So that's good.
So just for concept, what was your lowest deficit, or what do we build it down to?
I don't think we went lower than 1,700 during the last lockdown.
And now what are you eating?
2,400, around 2,500.
And not gaining, not losing.
I'm not gaining, and I'm not. Well, I'm gaining muscle, but I'm not gaining any weight. So to speak, after that.
So it just goes to show you have your maintenance is technically 2,400 calories. And now, so what happens is because you're now eating more calories, you have more energy. So you're now actually burning more calories. So it does actually take a little bit of building time to find and plateau, you know. I
think the hardest thing is eating that many calories when you've been eating in a deficit and eating clean calories. Anybody can get to 1,800, 2,000 calories and at 10 o'clock, and I've had this conversation with a few people who've all been in the same boat. Somebody has to eat 2,500, 3,000 calories a day. I don't know how now, just 3,500, 4,000 calories a day. If I get
peanut butter.
But if you get to that 2,000 calorie or 2,500 and you've still got another 500 calories, how is it right to then have a donut or 2 donuts at 11 o'clock at night just so you hit your calorie? You know, you tell me about that, because I that's the bit I struggle with, eating a clean 2,500, 3,000 calories.
And so anyone that's trying to go into calorie deficit, they have to think about all of their meals across all of the day. You can't just think about it in one sitting. So what we need to do with building calories as well is think about it from the get-go. So if your breakfast is usually 40 grams of porridge, make it 60. If you usually have X amount of berries with it, have more. You know, you're building each meal rather than just saying, right, I have 400 calories extra to eat, or 200. Like we would only ever kind of go up maybe in 100 and then get used to that, go up and another 100, get used to that. But that's just increasing each size of your meal by 50 calories rather than trying to have, because that's what everybody does when they go back in. Oh, maintenance, great, pizza, you know, or maintenance, great, I get to have loads of beers. And doing that in a clean way is hard. And that's why I was saying, getting into a calorie deficit is really hard. Getting out of calorie deficit is also really hard.
It's been the hardest part of this journey so far is putting the calories up and then eating that amount of calories. For me, personally.
Or moving less. That's another way to create less of a calorie deficit or to create more of a maintenance. But it's always good to eat more and move more, because both of them make you feel good, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Absolutely. No. And it's just, you're just a shining example of someone who, regardless of what the goal is, like the goal has been fat loss, the goal has been maintenance, and the goal is still maintenance and potential muscle building, right? So you've been in every phase of calories, but the main ingredient is the accountability and the consistency. And that's once you can do something consistently, the world's your oyster. If you can stick to something long enough to see a change, the change will come. You just have to trust the process. And I think you've done that so well. So it's great to be able to chat it out with you today. Thank you very much.
No problem.
But yeah, no, it's been great. And your story, I have particularly loved it, just because I've been the lucky one who's got to be alongside it from the get-go, which is great. But thanks for coming on and telling our listeners all about it.
No problem. If somebody listens to this and joins and makes the changes that I have in the journey, enjoy the journey that I've had, then you know, it's worth coming on there and letting somebody else know that results can be achieved. Absolutely. With the right attitude and the right help, you can get to wherever you want to get to. Absolutely. And you're a shining, what's the word? Example of that. So fair play. I don't see myself as that. It's mad. I know, it's just normal life for you. Yeah. And that's the fun part, is that this is what normal life can look like. You know, you can be happy, confident, in shape, wearing size small, whatever it is, and it doesn't feel like a chore, you know, because you just get into the right system and have the right habits in place. It's just completely, and I say this to everybody. Everybody can say, "Oh yeah, Nick, you're always posting about that, or mentioned in your stories and things like that. Are you ever out of the place?" So I wouldn't be in there if I didn't enjoy it. And that's the biggest thing, is trying to explain to people who aren't a member of the gym how good it is, how good the coaches are, how good the environment is, and how good the training is, how good the facilities are. You won't get that anywhere else.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that feedback. It's always nice to hear all the hard work is paying off. Yeah. And somebody I remember said to me, they left the gym and they worked so hard all week that they needed that element of social. So they'd go to the pub, you know? And then it was only when she said that, she was like, wow, I realized I was getting all that by being in that environment. I'm getting my social, I'm getting my exercise, I'm getting my mental health, all of them get looked after. So I always say it, whether it's a Zumba class, whether it's an EcoFit, whether it's a spin class, whatever it is, if it's going to make you enjoy it, stick to it long enough to see a change, then it's worth it. But obviously EcoFit's the best place, so there's no reason to look anywhere else. All right. Well, thanks, Nathan. We do appreciate you coming in to have a chat with us.
You've obviously blown the budget on the other guests. That's why I'm on. You know, you've had professors, you've had people who've got their own businesses. Do you know what? The feedback is people love the real nitty gritty, true life stories. Yeah. They love to be a fly on someone's life and just get to know what they do on a day-to-day basis. So these are the gems. So I was really looking forward to this one. But thanks for joining us, and we will see you in the gym. No problem.
Thank you.
Good night.
As always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for listening right till the end. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast as much as we did. And as always, if you're enjoying this podcast and you haven't already, do hit that subscribe button so that you can get notified when our next one comes out. And until next week, have a great weekend, and we will catch you all on the next podcast.